Chapter 1. The Wolf in the Sanctuary. The village of Red Hollow was accustomed to whispers. Folk spoke of strange howls spilling across the moors at night and livestock torn open, left like sacrifices in the mist. Yet no one knew the source of the terror until the autumn a stranger arrived. A gaunt man named Elias who carried himself with a quiet shame. Elias avoided company. He worked long days and disappeared after sunset. The innkeeper's wife noticed that he never set foot in the chapel, though he passed by it often, lingering at its threshold as if torn in two. Then came the killings. Each moonlit night another villager vanished. Children pulled from their beds, shepherds dragged from their huts. In the mornings, hunters would find paw prints larger than any wolf's, clawed gouges indoors, and blood that slicked the cobblestones. Suspicion grew, and eventually the townsfolk cornered Elias in the marketplace. His eyes glowed with a feral gleam, and beneath his skin something seemed to quiver, straining to be free. But before the mob struck him down, the church bell tolled. Elias bolted inside, collapsing to the pews, and before their eyes his form wavered. The monstrous frame folded in upon itself. Within there knelt a man, terrified, trembling, naked of his curse. He wept. He begged them to slay him. But pity clashed with fear, and the priest declared that God's house bound the beast within him. Beyond its walls the curse thrived, and so it was decided. Elias must live in the sanctuary. He became prisoner and penitent, never to set foot in the world after dusk. One storm-tossed night, lightning split the steeple, setting the rafters alight. Instinct drove the villagers to flee, dragging Elias with them as flames devoured the sacred wood. He screamed for them to stop, to let the fire take him, but panic overpowered wisdom. The instant he crossed the churchyard gate, the change consumed him. In the smoke and rain, the people of Red Hollow saw his body erupt into fur and fangs, his spine twisting, ribs cracking outward like broken cages. The beast screamed in triumph, its breath reeking of smoke and bloodlust. It tore through them. When dawn arrived, the church burned to ash, and the village was silent. Only footprints remained, heavy paw prints that trailed into the forest. Elias had no sanctuary anymore, and the wolf was free. Forever. Chapter 2. Red Hollow in Ashes. 10 years after Red Hollow burned, travelers still whispered of the wastes it had become. Where cottages once stood, only charred ruins remained. The church was nothing more than a skeletal frame, blackened beams pointing like accusing fingers at the sky. Few dared approach, for the screams that had ended the village had never truly faded. On certain nights, in the hush before dawn, people swore they heard them carried on the wind, screams tangled with a wolf's snarling joy. Elias had not perished. The curse had unmoored him. No longer bound by sanctity, he roamed, half man, half beast, at all hours. But what the villagers never knew was the truth of the curse. It was not merely hunger. It was penance. Each transformation stripped more of his humanity, until Elias was little more than a shadow walking in fur, half aware, hearing voices that were not his own. The beast drove him to wander. The remnants of Red Hollow became his haunt. He prowled the ruins, drawn endlessly to the blackened husk of the church. At twilight he stood where the altar had been, claws dripping, eyes burning with some faded memory of kneeling, begging for a mercy that never came. One night, as autumn fog rolled over the ruins, Elias heard movement, a lantern bobbing through the mist. A pilgrim approached, face obscured beneath a hood. The man stepped inside the ruins as if guided. He did not waver, did not tremble, even when Elias emerged from the shadows, half man, half monster, breathing in animal grunts. "I have been looking for you," the pilgrim said. His voice was steady, air weighted with ritual. From beneath his cloak, he withdrew a silver crucifix blackened with soot. "The priest's son," Elias rasped, his voice tearing from a throat caught between growl and speech. Something in him remembered. The priest who had declared the church his prison. The one who had forced him to linger when death might have freed him. The pilgrim's lantern flame guttered in the mist. "You will pay for what you did to my kin. But there is more than vengeance in this. Your soul is still chained, for God will not let the beast rest." At the words, something deep in Elias stirred. A memory of light through stained glass, of praying for forgiveness that never came. Bones cracked as he staggered backward, torn between despair and rage. The pilgrim's chant filled the ruins, a psalm for the dead. And the ground began to shudder. The scorched beams groaned as if some buried force pressed against them. Elias roared in agony, caught between holy words and the beast's hatred. From the ashes of the altar rose a faint glow, a shimmer like moonlight caught in smoke. The church was trying to return, a fragment of sanctity clawing its way back into the world. Elias collapsed at its center, writhing as skin and fur tore in succession, man and monster fighting for dominance. And the pilgrim only recited louder, voice shaking the ruins. The wolf screamed. The man wept. And the ruins of Red Hollow prepared to decide which would remain. Chapter 3. The Last Sanctuary. The ruins of Red Hollow trembled as the pilgrims' chanting battled the beast's howls. Elias writhed in the shattered nave, torn between claw and flesh, between man and monster. Then, with a sound like stone cracking in frost, silence fell. When the pilgrim dared open his eyes, the wolf was gone. Only Elias remained, naked and bloodied, his chest heaving in shallow breaths. Kneeling amid the faint phantom glow of the church long burned, he looked less like a man and more like a relic himself. "You've bound me," Elias whispered, eyes glimmering with something broken but aware. But the curse does not die. It only remembers. The pilgrim tightened his grip on the crucifix. His face, drawn and hollow, looked eerily like his father's had the day he was slain. "Then this will end tonight. Your soul will be freed." "No," Elias hissed. "It isn't bound only to me." And then came the truth, crawling from his lips like poison. Red Hollow's slaughter had fed the curse. Each scream, each corpse seared into the soil, had bled into the ruins. The wolf was no longer his alone. It had rooted itself in the land, prowling in shadow, lingering on the breath of every child born in these hills. "You cannot kill it," Elias said, his voice trembling. "If I die, it finds another." As if to prove him right, the fog thickened, and shapes moved in it. Pale figures lurked, villagers long dead, eyes hollow yet burning with spectral hunger. They staggered through the ruins, half real, their mouths opening in silent howls. The dead had become echoes of the wolf, called by blood and memory. The pilgrim's faith faltered as cold breath swept against his lantern flame. Elias rose slowly, weak but standing. For a moment his humanity shined through the madness. "There is one way," he said. "The beast lived when the church burned. If the church stands again—" His eyes lifted toward the half-collapsed steeple. "If sanctity is restored, it might bind the curse forever." The pilgrim knew what he meant. Stone by stone they could raise the sanctuary again, but only through sacrifice, the kind that sealed covenants in blood and spirit. The wolf stirred, Elias's form flickering as claws split from his palms. Time was almost gone. The pilgrim pressed the crucifix to Elias's chest, voice trembling with prayer. The ruins thrummed. Beams of spectral light pulsed through the fog, as if heaven itself strained to break through. Elias fixed his ruined gaze on the pilgrim. "Strike me down, but bury me beneath the altar. Chain me in God's name, and my body will anchor the sanctuary." The pilgrim hesitated. His hand shook. Then, with a desperate cry, he thrust the crucifix deep into Elias's flesh. The man convulsed, split by pain and ecstasy, flesh burning with holy fire. The ruins erupted in light. The fog evaporated. Stone shifted where ash had lain, and for a breathless moment, the chapel stood whole once more, a place reborn upon his sacrifice. When silence fell, the pilgrim was alone. Only a sealed altar remained, cold stone heavy with the weight of a man who gave himself to be the last foundation of Red Hollow's church. The wolf's cries echoed one last time in the distance, and then faded. But travelers say, even now, if you walk too close to the rebuilt chapel when the moon is full, you can hear scratching beneath the altar. A man's voice begging for release. A beast's growl answering in the dark. The last sanctuary still holds. For now.